Are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, March 14th, 2025. Man, when you don't write the year down ever, it's really hard to remember what year it is. Or maybe I'm just getting too old to remember things. I'm Josh Engleman, by the way. I'm joined by DK. He's right here. We're brought to you by Stokastic and OddsShopper. You guys should sign up for either the Sims or the Portfolio EV tool by clicking the link in the description of this video. 7 games on the DraftKings slate, 10 games on the FanDuel slate. Lots of weird injury news. It's going to be fun. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. DK, what's up?
Doing pretty good, man. I'm happy it's Friday. It's like 70 degrees here in Chicago for some reason, so in a good mood. And yeah, hopefully you can make some money tonight on a pretty crazy slate. So yeah, ready to break it down with you.
I don't like the idea of it being nicer for you right now than it is for me.
I have no idea why. I walked outside. I'm like, why is it summer outside? It's literally, I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, like 70 degrees.
It's 60 right now, but when you're out there, it does not feel 60. It feels 50 at best. So congrats, I guess. Better you than me. Look, in my experience, when it was really nice in Chicago, the only time I've ever been there, it was awesome. So I hope you enjoy your nice weather.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know if we're going to enjoy this slate.
I don't know either. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, so we'll see. And the early games are kind of hard to talk about because we have a lot of questionable tags.
Well, let's start with one that we can't talk about. The Boston Celtics taking on the Miami Heat. Boston 8-point favorites in Miami, 216 total. Q-tag Jason Tatum, Q-tag Jaylen Brown, Q-tag Derek White, Q-tag Kristaps Porzingis. The first thing I'm going to ask you is simply, who do you think plays for Boston?
Yeah, so my lean right now for Boston is that like one or two of these guys are going to sit. We have Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, White, questionable. I think like one to two of them. I don't think they're going to full punt it, but I don't really have a strong lean. Like I think Porzingis is going to play and be limited. He was close to returning last game, participated in shoot-around, so I kind of lean that he will play. But yeah, Tatum, Brown, White, I think like at least one of those guys is going to sit. But I don't really have a strong lean on who it's going to be.
Yeah, they feel like they're just going to be slowly getting themselves ready, and someone's going to be sitting basically every day for the rest of this season, which is what you should probably be doing when you are afforded a pretty big lead and have no worries other than just trying to win the title. I will say this, take it for what it's worth. I've got the actual line at Boston favored by 8.5. So that's leading me to believe that we're getting 3 of these dudes in and potentially 4. So, or maybe it's just Porzingis is the one that's out. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't feel like it's a Tatum or a Brown or a White number, but I don't know. We'll see. It might not matter because if it's 3 dudes in, we probably don't like them. No ownership to Boston. 1% across the board. It's hard to do anything until we know what's going on, but I'm not sure they're going to look that great either way. Second lowest total. I have it at the lowest pace. I don't think it's a very good matchup either way.
Yeah, as you mentioned, even if it's just like one guy that sits out, I still don't know if I'm getting too much from Boston. Some of these guys are priced up. Like you have Brown at almost 9K, Tatum over 11K, Derek White's over 7K. So like the price points aren't great on these guys. A lot of these guys are priced up from when they've been shorthanded. So you need a situation, I think, where like 2 or 3 of these guys sit, or I would start, looking to try to get some Celtics in. But right now, assuming everyone's in, I think they're probably the easiest team to just full fade.
They are currently the lowest owned team. So that sounds about right to me. Let's get away from Boston. Let's go to Miami. Miami's the exact opposite of Boston right now. They don't have anybody other than Alec Burks on the injury report. Otherwise, everybody's available. What they do have is a terrible matchup against a really good Boston team. They've got an implied total that is not really all that great for today. Highest owned guy is Andrew Wiggins on DraftKings at 6%. Highest optimal guy is 5%. Do you like anything on the Miami end?
No, not really looking at the price points. Again, Bam over 9K, Heroes at almost 9K. Obviously, those are the two going to be leading the way offensively. Wiggins, but again, they just feel a little overpriced. Wiggins is at 6.4K. I think if I had to play someone, it would be him. Minutes have been solid for him. Again, not a great matchup, as you mentioned, but I think in a competitive game, you're expecting mid-30s minutes from him. In the second half, last game, Khalil Ware did get benched for Haywood Highsmith. I think they could switch up the starting lineup and go a bit smaller and move Ware to the bench. He hasn't been playing as great of late, so wanted to mention that. I don't know. Again, it was Highsmith that started from in the second half, but it could be multiple guys if they switch it up. The value plays really not much here. Rozier's minutes have been down. Duncan, I don't think it's necessary to go there. Davion Mitchell's minutes also ticked down in a big way. He only played the first quarter and the third quarter last game. So, I would say this is probably the least appealing game on the slate at the moment.
I would agree. I wish what I'm about to say mattered at all, because it's not like anybody is interesting right now for Miami. I am expecting the bigger minutes for Haywood Highsmith today. You know, he played 31 2 games ago, 31 4 games ago, 27 5 games ago. I think this is a bigger minute Haywood Highsmith game. This is why he exists, to guard bigger wings. It's his whole gig. Like, if you're playing a crap team, Haywood Highsmith is not all that interesting. When you got to guard Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown or somebody on the wing, this is different. So I'm expecting him to get more minutes. It just doesn't matter because he's awful in DFS. So whether I project him for 22 minutes like we have him, or 29 minutes like I think is viable, he's still not going to look all that good. It does help me to want to not get to the non-stars from Miami, but I don't expect to have much here. I got to 9% of Wiggins, 1 share of like Bam and Hero. It's a really unappealing game, and I am totally cool with that, given the fact that we have 4 of them locking at 8 o'clock. I'd rather just not even have shares of this game, unless we get like everybody out for Boston, at which point then we'll start looking at some Celtics.
Yep, I'm in agreement there.
It's just, we're going to talk about a couple spots that are nuts, including this next game. So let's get into it, because we're going to have a lot to say. Indiana Pacers, 12.5 point favorites in Philly, 231 total. Now on the Pacers side, no ownership coming in. We might get a little bit more interesting because Pascal Siakam questionable with, okay, that's not a real word, right? Olkranon bursitis?
That's what I was just looking at too. There's no way that is. I've never heard of that.
Olkranon? What the hell is that?
I literally, if you give me like 20 guesses, I could not guess what that is.
The bony prominence of the elbow on the upper end of the ulna.
Why wouldn't they just
his
say
funny
like, right
bone,
elbow?
man? Just say funny bone. Just say funny bone. Who, like, oh man. So like, did Jim Electronon find that bone for the first time? They named that joint after him? I don't know. I don't know how any of this works. Either way, Siakam questionable. That's probably the only way we're getting to anything serious for Indiana if he ends up out.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think if Siakam is in, this is another pretty unappealing team. This team was like priced up from when Halliburton was out. He's now back. Halliburton himself is up to 8.7K. Kind of easing him back in his first game back, and only played 32 minutes. That's not great to see. Again, like guys like Siakam, Nembhard, McConnell, those guys are priced up from when Halliburton was out. Now, if Siakam misses, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the starting lineup. Like, they could do something weird and like dust off Jarris Walker and throw him in the starting lineup. Like, he was a DNP last game, but like, I think that could happen. You could see, I don't know, maybe Mathurin moving. Like, who do you think would start if Siakam gets ruled out?
Toppin.
You think Toppin would start?
I think so.
Okay.
That's the natural transition, right?
Yeah, but I feel like they just like bringing him off the bench. I don't know. It's like, has he started a game this year? I feel like he hasn't.
I think that's probably because I don't think Pascal Siakam has missed games.
Yeah, you might be right.
How many games has Siakam played this year? It's got to be close to all of them. I can't think of times
he's
where
been in almost every
he
game,
hasn't
yeah.
missed. He's played 64 of 64.
Okay.
So if you're curious of Obi Toppin starts, it's not going to help matters when Pascal Siakam, if he plays today, will qualify for awards. This will be game 65. So my guess is it'd be Toppin. I don't think, like, obviously I think Walker enters the rotation or something along those lines. In theory, they could go to like Neesmith at the 4 in a matchup against the Delaware 89ers or whatever the hell the G League team's called for Philly. My My guess is that it would be Toppin. And if it's him, he's going to look amazing at
Yes.
3,500 power forward, center eligible. If it's Walker, same scenario. He's going to look great too. If it's just one of the normal guys, like, yeah, they're going to look a little bit better because you're just getting extra minutes and stuff. But if Siakam's out, do you like anybody else other than who starts for him?
Probably not. Like, again, the price points are just up on these guys. I don't really know if I would get to like Halliburton with Siakam out. I still don't think I would get to much other than keep an eye on the starting lineup. If it's one of like Toppin or Walker that starts, then I would have some interest. Especially, I think Toppin would be the guy. Like, if he starts, he would be one of the best values, I think, on the slate.
Other than that, though, like, I ran the Sims. I have my lineups loaded. The most I got of anybody is 2% of Pascal Siakam. Now, I assume that I'll be getting 40 of Obi Toppin if he's the starter, but this is going to be a big time NBA Live Before Lock news piece, because if we lose Siakam, then we're going to create value here for Indy. Otherwise, like, yeah, you want to get a couple shares of Tyrese Halliburton, go for it. I don't think that's crazy at any way, but we need that Siakam news, because if he's in, this is a also unappealing basketball team from DFS side.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the Philadelphia 76ers are not an unappealing team today. Now, we don't know what the hell we're going to be doing officially yet with the Philadelphia 76ers, but I think we can make a couple assumptions regardless of the news. Is your expectation that Jared Butler is starting today no matter what?
Yes.
Okay. 72% owned, 4,600, point guard, shooting guard eligible. He's in 92% of my lineups. I think he's pretty clearly the number one play so long as he starts.
Yeah,
irrelevant to the injury news. I think that's how I feel about Jared Butler. Obviously, it gets better as we start losing these dudes.
Yeah. So again, Philly could be extremely shorthanded. Either way, they're shorthanded, and expect Jared Butler to start. He played 35 minutes last game. He's leading the team in potential assists over the last 3 games as well. He's also a good point per minute player too. So Jared Butler, I think right now stands out as your top value on the slate. I think we can definitely get some more Philly value, which we'll talk about here in a sec. But yeah, $4,600 Butler, I think looks amazing, even though he's getting a lot of ownership.
Okay. After that, there was going to be some caveats for the Philadelphia 76ers. Quentin Grimes is questionable. Kelly Oubre is questionable. Justin Edwards is questionable. Andre Drummond is questionable. Alex Reese is questionable. They signed O'Shea Brissett to a 10-day hardship contract today. I don't know officially if he has been made available or not yet. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. He's certainly not in the player pool, I would imagine. I actually haven't looked. FanDuel might have him. They're crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure on FanDuel. But yeah, I think I haven't seen anything on if he's for sure going to be available yet. I think we'll get that once we get confirmation on like who's playing for Philly.
So with all those Q tags, somebody's sitting. There's like for sure somebody's sitting there. If all 5 of these guys end up in, I am going to be very, very surprised. So do you have any leans?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think most of these guys are going to sit. Again, Philly has nothing to play for. They signed Brissett, right? So I think a majority of these guys are not going to play. I mean, do I have leans on who it's going to be? No, but I think like Philly's probably going to have only 8 or 9 guys today. That's my guess. So I would say a majority of these questionable players are not going to play.
If Quentin Grimes is in, are you interested in any way?
It would depend on who else is in and how many active players Philadelphia has. He's been like the one kind of like main guy that the minutes have been decent on. 27, 39, 31 minutes over the last 3 games. So I think if like he's active and Philly only has 8 guys, then yes, I would have interest. If he's active and Philly has like 10 guys, then not so much at 7,900. So it would depend on who else is available for Philly. But yeah, he's been leading the team in usage. I'm getting a ton of shots up, 25, 23 shots over the last couple games. So it would depend on who exactly is available there.
Any interest in Oubre if he's in? Because he is a real big, I don't want it.
No, I can't get to Oubre at 6,800, 20 and 26 minutes of the last couple games. So even if he's available, I'm not going to get to Oubre.
What else stands out then? Because I'm expecting Jeff Doughton, who's currently projected for 20% ownership, to look probably better than he does right now once we get all this news. the center situation between Yabu, Drummond, Bona, Reese can only really be talked about once some of this comes in. But like something probably looks good once we get it. We just, 3 of the 4 guys are questionable. So like hypothesizing that one is tough. What about Ricky Council? He's like, or Justin Edwards, I guess.
Yeah. So like Ricky Council would be someone I would like a lot, especially if a lot of these questionable players sit. 3,700. He's a guy that when he gets minutes, another, decent point per minute player. Over the last couple games, 29, 33 minutes, 13 and 14 shot attempts to Ricky Council, sub 4K. So like he's already in play if a lot of these guys are in. But if you start getting a majority of these guys out, I think Ricky Council is going to stand out as one of the best values in the slate. And then Jeff Doughton as well. I don't think Doughton would start, but he would probably back up Butler and have to play a decent amount too. The center situation, as you mentioned, is tough because there's just like, I kind of lean that at least one of Drummond or Yabusele is going to sit. We'll see. But yeah, Council is someone that I think is viable either way, but looks way better if some of these guys get rolled out. Justin Edwards, 4,100, not an amazing point per minute player, but if they only have 8 or 9 active players, he's going to be firmly in play too. So, I wish we could break it down better, but it's just so hard with like 5 guys questionable for Philly.
I want to correct one thing that you said, just in case chat heard you wrong. You said I expect one of Drummond or Yabusele to sit. Yabu fully active today. He should be in no matter what. Drummond, Reese, and Drummond and Reese are the 2 centers that are questionable for today. Just for confusion's sake. You're good.
Yep. Thank
you. You're good. I just know that like if we miss it, there's a sea of chat messages like Yabu, what's going on? I don't know. So
yes. Yeah, there's just half the team on Philly is questionable. So
this is another big NBA live before lock moment. We should get this news in and around 6:30. You don't want to skip out on live before lock today. Anything else that you think we can add right now for Philly? I think we kind of just need to let the chips fall as they may.
I think we'll just wait for that news, wait for the injury report, and then kind of go from there.
All righty. Well, let's go to game number 3 then. It's going to be the Clippers. 4.5 point favorites in Atlanta, 232 total. We got a Q tag on Ben Simmons. He's been missing for a bit. Norm Powell still out. But the big 3 for the Clippers are pulling some ownership. They looked good this morning. They still look good now. Kawhi projected for 25% ownership at 8,700. Harden and Zoo both at the 15% mark. Harden's coming in at 10.5 on DraftKings. He looks even better at 9,700 on FanDuel. Zubats is 8,600 on DraftKings, 8,100 on FanDuel. These 3 guys look pretty damn good to me today. I got all 3 in the top 12 coming out of our boom bust tool. And I would be happy to have all of them in and around their own ownership percentages. And I'd be happy to get a little bit more Kawhi. What stands out to you from the Clips?
Yeah, I think all 3 look pretty good here with Harden, Kawhi, and Zubats. Ty Lue said a few games ago that he's been playing like Harden and Zoo too many minutes, but he hasn't scaled back at all. Like they're still playing like massive minutes in competitive games, 38 minutes in back-to-back games there for Zubats. James Harden averaging around 40 minutes a game, which is crazy. Kawhi Leonard's averaging high 30s minutes. And again, like this is just where the offense is coming from, right? It's a lot of like low usage 3-and-D guys kind of like surrounding them. So 10.5 for Harden, 8.7 for Kawhi, 8.6 for Zubats. Do I prefer one of these guys more than the other? Not really. Again, they're all similar ownership too. So I just think you're going to want some interest for sure in these guys. Obviously I think the ceiling's the highest on Harden. Zubats, is only center eligible, so relatively high opportunity cost. But those 3 I think look great. I don't think I'm going to get to the value for the Clippers, and just because I think we're going to get a lot of Philadelphia value. We'll talk about some other value here in a bit as well. Probably not going to mess with the likes of like Chris Dunn or Batum or guys like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is basically 3 guys and 3 guys only. I think Dunn and Batum are fine if you're in like a 150 max situation. I got to move that filter. My bad, guys. But I think it's Harden, Zoo, and Kawhi as the clear priorities. And I really like Kawhi. I liked him even more earlier today. Still happy to get there right now. We have him optimal quite a bit more than his current ownership. The positive leverage is looking pretty good on a bunch of these guys, especially Zoo too. But center is loaded, and it might create a bunch more value as we slowly work through this slate. But this matchup against Atlanta is great for the Clippers. They gained 2.8 possessions over their average. This is one of the better pace up spots that they can find. And if they're going to keep jamming out Harden, Zubats, and Kawhi for 36 plus minutes, then I am going to soak that up every time that I can.
We just got news that Grimes is out. We didn't get anyone else, but and Brissett is available to make his debut.
Okay, that'll work.
But we're still waiting
I mean,
on
I didn't expect Grimes, so nothing crazy there, but
it's weird that we haven't got the rest of the guys. Like we haven't got Oubre or Drummond or Edwards yet. News, but we got the Grimes news.
Yeah, that is a little odd, I guess. Huh. How does that one come out right now?
I know. That's why I'm confused as to why that came out and like we're not getting news in the other guys.
Yeah. One guy out, one guy in. We're dead neutral on Philly so far. Okay. Let's get to the Atlanta side. They are healthy. Nobody out. I mean, obviously, like Jalen Johnson out. Clint Capella's out. I don't think it matters. Like, just Dominic Barlow takes those minutes instead. And you go about your business. Nobody's owned for Atlanta. They're in a terrible spot. Giant pace down matchup. Clippers defense is good. Highest owned guy for Atlanta is 7% to Onyeka Okongwu. He's up to 7,400 now. It's single digit ownership across the board on FanDuel. Do you see Atlanta as any sort of like contrarian move? Do you want to get some of Atlanta because you have Harden and Zoo and Leonard on the other side?
No, there's not a ton that I like here for Atlanta. As you mentioned, Capella out, but not really expecting a big increase in minutes for Okongwu. Maybe he plays another minute or two, but he's up to 7,400. Trae Young is 10.4. Again, really bad spot here. So I think it's pretty hard to get to the two main guys there from Atlanta. Value options, like can you take shots on like LeVert or Niang in tournaments? Yeah, I think you can. Niang right now getting the most ownership, 4.1K. He's someone that, pretty consistently playing mid-20s minutes. If he's playing really well, could he push for 30 minutes? We've seen it a couple times. So he's playable in tournaments. LeVert, I think, is playable in tournaments as well. I don't love the price point as much on LeVert, but I don't think I'm going to get to anyone else here for Atlanta, and there's no one else really getting any ownership.
Yeah, the most I got of anybody was 7% of George Niang. So I'm going to hope that goes away. I mean, not that I mind having 7% of George Niang, but like it's George Niang. I'm certainly not excited about anything I'm getting here from Atlanta. It's just a really, really bad spot on a day with much better spots. I do have something for you guys. You might be interested. Let's check this out. Please work when I do this. Haha, it did work. Flash sale going on right now for the deeper dive and live before lock. If you want a 14-day free trial of the Portfolio EV tool, 2 weeks, you pay us nothing, no hoops to jump through. You could cancel it tomorrow if you hate it. You'll still have it for 13 more days and you can still hang out, but you can get a peek at the Portfolio EV tool. It's actually being shared on Playback right now, playback.tv/Stokastic. I have it up, auto refreshing, showing the best bets available on the NBA side right now. You can grab them if you're watching on Playback, or you can just go sign up and get them for yourself. Whether you're on pick'em sites or sportsbooks, Portfolio EV is the tool for you. And you don't even have to take any risk. You could just come in, use the promo code DFS when you're signing up and get a 14-day free trial. You can go to OddsShopper.com. You can download the app. You can click the link in the description of this video. I'm sure the link will also pop up in chat from time to time. But this flash sale of 14 days free will only last until the end of Live Before Lock, and then it is done. So take advantage right now. That worked out better than I thought it was going to. All right, let's head to game number 4. Dallas Mavericks taking on the Houston Rockets. Oops, I typed the Clippers name into a cell I shouldn't have. Mavs are 12.5-point dogs in Houston, 220 total. Another one of these teams, man. This is Philly all over again. No AD, no Daniel Gafford, no Jaden Hardy, no Kyrie Irving, no Derek Lively, no Omax Prosper, Q-Tag, Exum, Kai Jones, PJ Washington, Brandon Williams. There's no ownership coming into Dallas right now, and there's basically no way to talk about them. So I'll ask you this. Regardless of injury status, do you like anything from the Mavs?
I think if Brandon Williams starts, I would have some interest in him at 5,500. He came out the bench, played 28 minutes. He's been playing very well for Dallas. So I think if he starts, I would have some interest in him. If he doesn't start, then there's really nothing I think I would play for Dallas.
Yeah, I don't know which of these guys are going to be in. I have a hard time believing I would ever get to Kai Jones if he's in. I'd like probably a couple shares of Brandon Williams if he's in, but I'm also very nervous about his health. Exum kind of just plays 22 minutes no matter what's going on. Start, bench, doesn't matter. So I'm good there. And then, I don't know. I can't be like fully confident in PJ Washington, but the more these guys are in, the less I'm interested in the rest of Dallas because all these prices are just jacked up from all these dudes being out for so long.
Yeah, for sure.
And terrible matchup.
If you get like one of like PJ or Kai Jones in too, like again, it's just gonna add more bodies here. They've been priced up from how shorthanded they've been. PJ, if he plays, I think he'll probably be limited. He was out for a while, then came back for like a game or two, re-injured it. So I think they'd probably ease him back in. So I don't think you get to PJ. But yeah, so obviously we'll keep an eye on the injury report. If Dallas is down to like 8 guys or something like that, then it's a little bit of a different story. Then I think you could look to Dallas. But if they have like 10 guys active, then yeah, probably won't be getting to anyone.
Oh, I'm not sharing anymore on Chrome or on Playback. Huh.
Oh yeah, Playback. Yeah, I just noticed that. Yeah.
Oh, I see. My tab died. Well, now that I know that can happen, let me turn that off. I didn't realize I had my tab killer open for this tab. Okay, perfect. That should not do that again. I'll make sure to keep an eye on that one, Playback people. I'll check that out in the future. Let's get to the Houston side. Call it 10% ownership for Alperen Şengün, 10% ownership for Jabari Smith, 10% ownership for Tari Eason. We are still without Reed Shepherd and Amin Thompson. Otherwise, we're getting everybody for Houston. I don't see anybody as an immediate priority, but even at 9,900, I am pretty interested in Alperen Şengün in this matchup.
Yeah, it's a great spot here against Dallas, regardless of who's available for Dallas. Like Şengün's in a smash spot. We've been talking about it, but he's pretty consistently in competitive games, playing mid-30s minutes. Played 38 against Orlando, 33 against Phoenix. But yeah, he's pretty consistently playing mid-30s minutes. The ceiling's massive. I don't love the price point here. 9,900 is, I feel like, a little bit pricey, but I think we will have a lot of value on the slate. And you're going to have to spend your salary somewhere. So, yeah, the ceiling's obviously massive there on Şengün. Tari Eason, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith all getting a little bit of love. I think, like, of those wings, Tari Eason would probably be the preferred option. He's been starting, playing decent minutes as well. We know Tari Eason's a solid point per minute player. Over the last few games, 33, 26 minutes. You're probably expecting high 20s minutes from him, I would say. So he's a reasonable option there at 6,200. You were seeing overlap for Steven Adams and Şengün for a bit there. You didn't last game really, but the game was kind of a blowout. Again, I'm not going to get to Steven Adams. Did want to mention they were overlapping a bit there with him and Şengün. I don't think I'm going to get to the guards like Van Vliet or Jalen Green, but yeah, Eason or Şengün and the wings I think are playable here.
I'm thinking that the double big is dead now that Van Vliet's back.
Yeah. I think they're doing it because they're missing a few guys, so that's why they're running it.
Yeah, I think with him back now, they don't have spillover minutes left anymore. So my guess is that, and obviously they have no need to do it here against Dallas. I mean, if they want to wall off the rim, they could absolutely do that, and Dallas is going to find it hard to score, but yeah, my guess is Steven Adams is going to be dialing it back a little bit here. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like 2 minutes or something at the end of a quarter or something along those lines, but I'm not expecting a ton of it. I didn't get much here. 11% to Tari Eason was the most that I got. Seems fine. We could end up with a bunch more Dallas, though. This is another spot where either you're watching playback.tv/Stokastic and you're watching Greg and I break down ownership, late swaps, watch the games. We are going to have 4 games locking at 8 o'clock, all sorts of news, new ownership updates. If you're not watching playback tonight, you're making a giant mistake. It's the perfect opportunity to try to improve your lineups while the slate is going on. If you have League Pass, you can link it up and watch the games. If you don't, we have 20 VIP passes. Worst case scenario, you just listen to Greg and I talk about the slate. Either way, you guys want to be there. It's the premier spot post-lock to make sure you're getting all of the information.
All right. I forgot Adams got ejected. That's what happened with him and Plumlee. That had me on full tilt mode because I had Plumlee in DFS and I had his prop. So yeah, that was not cool.
I mean, if Mason Plumlee's going to try to get that smoke, he better bring his brothers because it's not going to go well. You're going to get no one wants that.
Mess with Steven Adams. No way.
He is pretty close to the top of the list of guy you don't pick. Like, I can't imagine there's a lot of dudes in the NBA that want to take that smoke from him. Like mindset, clearly size, strength, body. I mean, you're going to get mauled.
They were trying to, I saw a video, they were like trying to go at it in the locker room too. Like they were like trying to like break each other up. So
yeah, Mason Plumlee is going to learn a valuable lesson there. Like who, chat, or do you remember, or chat, let me know. Who did he pick up and just like carry away from Ja? I can't remember who it was now. He's like, I told him you're getting too close to my point guard. So I told him, all right, you got to go. And I picked him up and just carried him away.
Yeah. I forget who he picked up, but I remember that.
Oh my God. They just carried him like a baby. I love it so much. Adams being tough is a myth. It is not a myth. Not even close to a myth. It wasn't Lopez. Yeah, it was a Rocket. I can't remember who it was now. Anyway, it's going to annoy me. Anyway, let's get to this one because this is the first like, holy shit, we have real players that we could talk about. The Cleveland Cavaliers were 2.5 point favorites in Memphis. 244 total. Fastest pace game, highest total. No Donovan Mitchell here for Cleveland today. And that is resulting in all of the ownership. DeAndre Hunter is probable. We have 4 guys on Cleveland right now, 40% owned. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Ty Jerome. So of those 40% owned guys, is there anything you're nervous?
Sorry, you broke up there for a second at the end.
Yeah. Is it breaking up still?
No, you're good.
Okay.
I just heard, is there anything of the 4 and then it cut out?
Any of those 40% owned guys that you're a little dubious of?
I guess like if I had to pick a least favorite, it probably would be Jared Allen, but man, I think this is your top team to target right now with Donovan Mitchell out. So yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you get away from it.
I would say Allen.
I don't know how you get away from it. I have more than the field of Garland, more than the field of Mobley, more than the field of Allen, and more than the field of Ty Jerome. I got them all. They're ranked 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the boom bust tool right now. I don't know what to do. The matchup obviously tough defensively, but to take Donovan Mitchell off the floor for this matchup, to get a pace up spot for Cleveland with a total that looks like this, they have 212 aggregate percentage points of optimal rate today. That means you're looking to have 2 Cleveland dudes in everything you're building, essentially. What do you like the most?
Yeah, so again, they look amazing. With Mitchell off the court this year, Mobley 1.39 fantasy point per minute player, Garland 1.35. In that most recent game, Garland had a 36% usage rate. He also had 20 potential assists. So he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. He's going to be chucking a lot more as well. So Garland looks amazing. Evan Mobley, the potential assists on him were solid last game as well. He had 13 potential assists. So they're basically just running the offense through Garland and Mobley. Mobley, 8,600, reasonable price point for him. I think you're probably expecting mid-30s minutes. He looks amazing. Ty Jerome's 4,800. He rested last game. He's also a good point per minute. Expect him to play, I would say low to mid-20s minutes, maybe a bit more if he's playing well. We've seen ceiling games from him, and he's, again, at a relatively cheap price point. So Jerome looks like an amazing value. Jared Allen at 6,400. I think you're probably expecting a bit of a minutes increase for him just because with Mitchell out, again, they're a little bit more shorthanded. He played 34 minutes there against Brooklyn. Usually he's in like the high 20s to around 30-minute range. So again, expect a slight increase in minutes there for Jared Allen. He still looks good. Of the four, I would say he's probably my least favorite. But again, I think you definitely need some Cleveland exposure. And I think there's even some viable contrarian options here as well. Max Strus is 4,600. He's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility. Last game he didn't shoot the best, but you did see 31 minutes from him, shot 2 of 10. I think he's a reasonable value. DeAndre Hunter is 5,500. He sat out last game. He's back. Keep an eye on the starting lineup. It's either going to be Okoro or Hunter. Last game it was Okoro. Could be Hunter now that he's back. Either way, I think Hunter. Well, I shouldn't say either way. I think Hunter would be in play for me if he starts. If he comes off the bench, I think it would be kind of hard to get to him. But yeah, all in all, I think this team looks amazing. I think Garland and Jerome would probably be my two preferred options, but love Mobley. I think Allen looks good. And again, I think Strus is viable as well.
Pascal Siakam is about to qualify for postseason awards. He is in today.
Okay.
So we're going to get Siakam. Got his eligibility to worry about. I'm a little intrigued by Hunter. We do have him as the technical starter for right now, but I do think that is up in the air a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Strus getting some love, happy to get there. If Okoro would get the start, he's at least viable, but pretty bad per minute guy. So you really do need the minutes. Ultimately, I'm just going to have a ton of Garland, Mobley, Allen, and Hunter, and hopefully that works out. The only thing that makes me a little nervous about the volume of Cleveland is the lack of volume of the Memphis Grizzlies. There's no ownership here. 5% to Zach Edey is the most that we're seeing. It's all super low single-digit optimals. This is a pace down spot for Memphis. And the biggest piece that could complicate matters, Jaren Jackson is questionable. I would be surprised if he plays today. To me, it makes more, unless you're like really going after this Cleveland game, they're on the front end of a back-to-back. Makes a little bit more sense to me that he would play tomorrow. But if he's in, I really don't know how you get to Memphis.
Yeah, I agree there. If Jaren's in, I don't think I would consider anyone on Memphis. The price points on Ja and Desmond Bane have gone up. Their minutes have been solid, but if Jaren's back, I think it would be really hard to go there. Some of these value plays have been priced up from when like Jaren and Aldama have been out. Yeah, Aldama's still out, but even if Jaren gets ruled out, I still don't know if I would get to much here from Memphis. Last game, they started Gigi Jackson. They could go to Vince Williams. We've seen him pick up a start before with Jaren out. So I guess keep an eye on the starting lineup. If Jaren's out and whoever starts, I think would be maybe playable. But again, Memphis is still running a pretty deep rotation. Like last game with Jaren and Aldama out, they still played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They played 11 guys in the first half. So, that's not great to see. Keep an eye on that news. But right now, there's not much here. Again, even if Jaren gets rolled out, I still don't think I would get to a ton.
No, I don't. Like, obviously, if Jaren's out, I'm really happy to get a Bane or Morant in any of these like heavy Cleveland lineups that I have.
Mm-hmm.
That just feels like a natural pairing, but those guys are not going to be pulling a ton of ownership. And after that, I just don't know how you sift through the rest of these Memphis guys. I don't see it today. It's a shame too. I would like to just load up on this game.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm definitely going to be having a lot of Cleveland and like no Memphis.
Yeah. All righty. Well, we shall continue. Game number 6, Orlando Magic, 10.5 point dogs in Minnesota, 207 total. This is the lowest total on today's slate by 8 points. I have it as the second lowest pace. This is a defensive Orlando team, terrible offense. A defensive Minnesota team, slightly better offense. Only one guy in this game, DraftKings, FanDuel, either team, made it to 10% ownership or higher, and it is 10% on the dot for Wendell Carter Jr. We are waiting on Q tags for KCP and for Cole Anthony, who missed their last game. What do you want to do here for Orlando if they're both in? Do you see anything? Do you want that Wendell Carter Jr. value? Are you hoping that Cole Anthony plays 30 minutes?
Yeah, if Cole Anthony's in, I think he would be in consideration at 5K. Again, he's one of those guys where, the range of outcomes for Cole Anthony is wide because he's someone that like he's playing well and they can extend him and play him like 30 plus minutes. We saw 49 fantasy points from him a couple games. If he's really struggling, they can very easily bench him and go elsewhere. So Cole Anthony's in. I think he would be playable in tournaments. Carter Jr., I think he's getting some ownership just because the price point, 4,800. I don't really have any super strong takes there. He's usually in that high 20s to around 30-minute range. So, last guy in, sure. I think it's fine. Again, not a great spot. The price points on Franz and Paolo, not ideal. 9,100 there for Paolo, 86 for Franz. You do have, again, Cole and KCP questionable. You saw Corey Joseph get dusted off again and start with Cole Anthony missing that last game. Kojo's a really bad point per minute player. He did play 30 minutes, though. So I guess depending on what happens with some of these other teams, like what happens with Philly, maybe Kojo could be playable if Cole Anthony gets rolled out and he starts again. But another pretty unappealing team on this main slate.
Yeah. If we lose Cole Anthony and KCP, there's probably going to be something popping up in the Anthony Black area, maybe. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be pretty bleak. Free Goga. I need to get a free Goga shirt. I don't get it, man. I really don't.
He's only played 5 minutes last game. Wow, that's wild.
I can't wrap my head around it, dude. Truly.
Because he was playing really
legitimately good defensively.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. Anyway, pay attention to the news. Again, potential late swaps at 8 o'clock with the news on KCP and Cole Anthony. Then we go to the Minnesota side. For the first time in a while, we have nothing going on in Minnesota. These guys are just full stop available. And unfortunately, they have to face the Orlando Magic, who are still a really good defense. 3% ownership to Anthony Edwards on DraftKings, 4% ownership to Julius Randle on FanDuel, are the highest owned men from Minnesota. Now, I will happily have a share of Anthony Edwards, be okay with a Randle share or two, but these guys look awful today.
Yes, they do. Price points aren't great. Again, not a great matchup either. This is one of the more unappealing teams. Well, I feel like I've said that a lot, but there's like a few teams that you want a lot of exposure to on this slate, and then a lot of these teams you're kind of crossing off. Minnesota, I think if I had to play someone, it would be $6,300 Rudy Gobert. Okay. So 2 games ago, he got in foul trouble. Last game was a blowout. He was on pace to play like mid-30s minutes if the game would have stayed competitive. So, I think if I had to play someone, it would be him because I think his minutes I don't think he's on a limit. So, if you want to take a shot on Gobert, sure. But yeah, like Randall, Ant, I don't love the price points. McDaniel's way too pricey. Yeah, like this is just a situation. Naz Reid's priced way up from when Gobert has been out. So there's not much else to add here for Minnesota.
Couldn't agree more. But there's a lot more to add for this final game on the DraftKings slate. The Charlotte Hornets, 2.5-point underdogs in San Antonio, 231 total. Now, for the Hornets, we got the San Antonio side of this one is a lot like the Cleveland side, and we'll get there in a bit. But for the Hornets, Damian Bowe is with the G League team. So is Salon. Otherwise, it's the same injury news we're used to. 25% ownership coming into Miles Bridges, who has been lethal lately. And I don't just mean personally. 15% ownership to LaMelo Ball, 15% ownership to Daquan Jeffries, and another 10 coming into Mark Williams. Are you doing the Miles Bridges thing today? Because he is 9,100 now.
It feels like he's way overpriced, but man, like he's been playing extremely well of late. Since the All-Star break, Miles Bridges, 1.42 fantasy point per minute player, 31.1% usage rate. So, the price point is up on Bridges, but it's deserved. Like he's playing big minutes in competitive games, 39, 35, 37, 37 over the last 4 games. He's rebounding the ball well. The potential assists are up a bit on Bridges as well. So, even though he's priced up, I still have some interest in Bridges. LaMelo at 9,800 right now, coming in about half the ownership of Bridges. I think that's interesting. I think LaMelo is a decent pivot off of Bridges at about half the ownership. LaMelo in a competitive game, you're probably expecting low to mid 30s minutes from him. So I think he's an interesting tournament option there. Mark Williams, the minutes are just not there, right? They're playing three centers right now with him, Nurkic, and Diabate. So I think it's pretty hard to get to Mark Williams. And the only other guy I think in consideration is $3,400 Daquan Jeffries. And my interest level in him will depend on what happens with Philadelphia and who exactly is available, and Boston, I guess. Some of these teams that we're still waiting on some news. So right now, I think he's a fair value play. Sorry.
So I was adding Dallas to the list of teams with a billion Q tags.
Yep. So right now, I think he's a reasonable value play, but I think there could be some better value opening up. So minutes, again, Daquan Jeffries is not going to be like a great point per minute player playing alongside like LaMelo and Bridges and Mark Williams. But 34 and 32 minutes over the last couple games does make him in play at 3,400.
Yeah, I got to 20% of Bridges, so I'm totally cool with that. I am lighter on LaMelo and Jeffries right around the field for Mark Williams. There's no chance I'm getting to anybody else other than that group before, though. Mm-hmm. Pretty limited for the rest of Charlotte. But let's get to the second main event of the evening, the San Antonio Spurs. And the reason that they look as ridiculous as they do is because De'Aaron Fox is done for the year, having surgery on his finger, and that is creating quite the hectic San Antonio Spurs. They have guys ranked 6th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. We have 50% ownership coming into Stephon Castle at 6,300. In the 30s on Devin Vassell, Chris Paul, and Keldon Johnson. 20% to Jeremy Sohan, and another 10 for the Barnacle of the Bay. Kelly Oubre ruled out for today. Andre Drummond out. Justin Edwards out.
See, there you go. So I think they only have 8 then.
I think they will only have 8. Yes. Alex Reese available to play.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think because Hood Schifino, I think it would be 7, and then Brissett 8. So I think they have 8.
Yeah, I think they have 8. Yeah. Oh boy, have fun on Live Before Lock breaking that one down, fellas, because that's going to be crazy. What are you doing? Who's your favorite San Antonio Spur?
That's a good question. So I think if he starts, it probably would be Stephon Castle, 6,300. His usage has been solid. Since the All-Star break, with De'Aaron Fox off the court, 30.7% usage rate, 20% assist percentage. I think he'd move into the starting lineup there. So I think Stephon Castle, assuming he starts, would probably be the first guy that I would look to. I think he realistically could play mid 30s minutes for sure if he starts. So, I like Stephon Castle a good amount there. Vassell, Keldon Johnson, both in the 30% ownership range. I think both look good. You're expecting more usage here for Devin Vassell. With De'Aaron Fox off the court since returning from break, let's say Devin Vassell, usage rates not great, but again, that's a relatively small sample size. He should play good minutes and get a lot of shots up. So he's a pretty good play there in the mid range. Keldon Johnson's only 4,700. Only played 17 minutes there against Dallas, but I think you're probably expecting mid 20s minutes, maybe even a little bit more. 4,700 again makes him look like a really good value. He's got about a 29% usage rate with Fox off the court. So he looks great. CP3 ownership does scare me a little bit just because with the Spurs having like nothing to play for, I could see him, them kind of easing the minutes on him. Again, 25, 22, 25 minutes for the last 3 games. So I don't really see a huge minute ceiling there for Chris Paul. So of the guys getting like a ton of ownership, I'd say he's probably my least favorite. But I mean, he can still put up a decent game in limited time. Jeremy Sohan there at 4,900. Again, he'll play the backup 5 to Bismack Biyombo. I think he's another reasonable value option. Will I get to like Harrison Barnes or Champagny? Probably not with this Philly news, right? I think you're just going to be getting a lot of the Philly value now. But Castle, Vassell, Keldon, I think look like 3 really good options at their respective price points.
Yeah, I got 70-something% of Castle. I'm in the 30s on Vassell and Keldon. I'm in the 20s on Paul and Sohan. Got a couple shares of Barnacle. Got a couple shares of Julian Champagny. I mean, there's a lot of minutes to go around. Not a ton of players left at this point. Feels like Castle's just going to get the keys, so to speak, for the rest of the season. I don't know why you wouldn't want to get him the reps. So I think that makes a ton of sense, especially get him out there with Chris Paul. Just let Paul get in his ear for the next month. Learn him something. certainly helped Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back in the day. Maybe it'll help Stephon Castle in this spot. But Cleveland and San Antonio, high-level priorities today. Philly, looking like they're going to be by the time this is over. You guys will see that updated info on Live Before Lock. And who knows what happens in Dallas? They might have 7 real bodies tonight, so you never know. That concludes the DraftKings portion of this slate. DK, take it away. What do you got?
Yeah, I wanted to answer one quick question in the chat because someone asked if Hood Schifino is playing. Yeah, Nick Nurse confirmed that him and Brissett will be available, so that they'll have 8. Hood Schifino is going to be available for Philly.
Hood Schifino was never listed on the injury report, so he was available all day. Whether he plays or not is up in the air. I mean, he probably does now, but he was available. He was never listed on the injury report that I remember seeing.
Yeah, I think he was just in the G League, but yeah, he's confirmed going to play. He has to.
Well, I don't know about has to, but he's going to suit up. Maybe he takes the final seat on the bench like Chris Boucher.
sits like 10 people away from everyone else. I took a shot in Boucher that slate, and I saw.
Dude, I had 75%.
Yeah, I saw him sitting like at the very end of the bench, and I was like, nah, he's not playing. Like, I'm done.
It's amazing. All right, we got 3 games left here. They're all FanDuel only. They're not on the DraftKings main slate, so we're going to zip through these a little bit quicker. Live Before Lock coming up next. Guys, hit that like button. Greg and Eric from 6 to 7, breaking down everything, handling that 7 o'clock news. There's a lot coming in. Ooh, Tatum in. Brown out. Porzingis out. White in. So Tatum, White in. Brown, Porzingis out.
Okay. 2 out. I think there'd probably be some guys in consideration, but I still don't think I'm going to be getting a ton of Boston.
No, I don't want much from that one just for late swap purposes.
Yeah.
If you're playing on FanDuel, you're going to want a lot of the Lakers. They don't have anybody real today, unfortunately. Luka out, Rui out, Hayes out, LeBron out, Gabe Vincent doubtful, Trey Jameson is questionable, Dorian Finney-Smith is doubtful, 90% ownership to Jordan Goodwin, 50 to Connect, 50 to Reeves, 25 to Shake Milton. There's a lot to like here on the Lakers side if you're playing on FanDuel.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I think you have to have a good amount of interest to this Lakers team. Again, they're extremely shorthanded here. I believe they'll have 10 guys at best available. I think they're going to go with the starting lineup. My guess would be Reeves, Goodwin, Connect, Vanderbilt, Len, I think. Reeves, if this game can stay competitive, he's going to be a big reason why. With LeBron and Luka off the court, against a relatively small sample size since returning from break, 1.25. But again, expect his usage and assist percentage to be extremely high here. So if the Lakers want any chance of keeping this game competitive, you're going to need a pretty big game there from Austin Reeves. I expect huge minutes for Jordan Goodwin. He's 4,200. So I think he's your easiest guy to get to. Dalton Connect's going to be chucking as well, 4,800. I think he stands out as a great value. If Vanderbilt starts, I think he's in play. The only downside of Vanderbilt is I don't really know if I see like a massive minute ceiling on him. Like the most minutes he's played this year has been like mid to high 20s. But he'll obviously be more productive with both Luka and LeBron out. Would I consider anyone else? Maybe you can take a shot in like a Shake Milton in tournaments at 3,700. He's going to have to play some decent minutes here, but unfortunately, it's the team we're going to have a lot of interest in. The center rotation, I think, is kind of tough with like Len, Jemison V plays, and Koloko. But those guys we talked about, Goodwin, Connect, Reeves, Vanderbilt, they look really good here.
I love that you called Dalton Connect good value or great value because he's like great value JJ Redick.
Yes.
Denver tough to get to today. Aaron Gordon is questionable. If he's in, I think it really limits what you can do here for the Nuggets. Jokic is 12,800. You take a bite out of Westbrook's minutes if Gordon is in. Highest owned guy for the Nuggets on the FanDuel side is Michael Porter Jr. at 7%. I don't have any priorities here. All I'll say is if you want to play Nikola Jokic, play him. He's confirmed good.
Yeah. I have a little bit of interest in Jokic in tournaments. Price point's obviously way up and there's a lot of blowout risk, but I think it would make some sense if you're playing a guy like Austin Reeves. Obviously, you're hoping for a competitive game. If the game stays competitive, it's probably because a huge game from Reeves. If the game does stay competitive, you could see a big game from Jokic. So if you're going for that like narrative, I guess in tournaments, I don't hate that like pairing. So yeah, Jokic is playable on any slate. He's got a massive ceiling right now. Again, getting very little ownership, but if Lakers can somehow keep it competitive, yeah, you could see a huge game here from Jokic. I don't think I'm gonna get to anyone else though from Denver.
No, very unappealing unless Gordon ends up out. Toronto Raptors, 2-point dogs in Utah, 235 total. Q-tag Scotty Barnes, Q-tag Ochai Agbaji. Absolutely no ownership coming into FanDuel for Toronto right now. If Barnes and Agbaji end up out, you're probably going to get a little bit of ownership here. They're also still missing Grady Dick, Mobo, Jakob Poeltl, Jared Rhoden, Jacoby Walter. But there's probably interesting stuff to get to for Toronto on FanDuel. I just don't know who's going to be the guy they choose to play 38 minutes today for no reason.
Right. Yeah. It's really hard to figure out what they're going to do with the minutes. The main guys, again, I don't think you're going to see like huge minutes from like Barrett quickly or Barnes if he plays. Keep an eye on those Q tags. They could be a bit shorthanded if both those guys are out. I believe they would have 9 active with Boucher, who obviously wouldn't play if both the questionable players sit. So they could be relatively shorthanded there. I'm still just in shock and disbelief what I saw Toronto did to Jamal Shed last game. I had played him in DFS, obviously, and had his props, and I just couldn't believe it. So I'm still mind blown from what I witnessed there. But yeah, if both those questionable players are in, there's not much. If they're both out, and then I think you can start considering some of these Toronto guys. Depending on the starting lineup, but maybe some of these value options, depending on who they go with.
Then on the Utah side, fresh off a $100,000 fine, no John Collins, no Keontae George, 14% ownership to a $7,400 Walker Kessler. Everybody else is sub 10%. This game's disgusting. Anything here for Utah for you?
Let's see. So Colin Sexton, I think, is interesting in tournaments. He's 6,300. The minutes have ticked up on him, 33 and 30 minutes over the last couple of games. The usage has been great as well. And the potential assists have been really good for Colin Sexton as well. He's averaging 18 potential assists over the last couple of games. So I kind of like Sexton there for tournaments right now, not getting much love. Again, a little under 10%. Walker Kessler, the guy getting the most ownership here, a little over 10%. Indifferent on him, 7,400 is a reasonable price point. I don't see the minute ceiling right now for Clarkson or Markkanen. I don't think there's a reason for them to push it. But yeah, I do like Sexton here for tournaments.
I like that shout. If he's going to be getting 30 minutes now, I'm interested. I don't know if they're going to start, now that they can't tank the way they want to tank, if they're going to start tanking with minutes. That could get a little scary, but
that's true.
Toronto, Utah is going to be quite the tank off tonight. And then we close it out. Sacramento Kings, 3-point dogs in Phoenix, 232 total. Q-tag, Domantas Sabonis. Q-tag, Trey Lyles. No ownership right now. Are you anticipating anything for Sacramento if Sabonis plays? Because I think that kind of takes a bite out of all these dudes.
No, if Sabonis is in, I don't think I'm going to get into much. DeRozan's right now the guy getting the most ownership. I think if I had to click someone, it would be him, but don't love the price point there. If Sabonis is out, you would get most likely JV starting. He did get benched in the second half for Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles also on the injury report as well. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, if Sabonis is in, there's nothing really here for Sacramento.
Now, if he's out, as usual, shares of Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, they're going to be totally fine. I don't think there's any chance you can go to a $7,100 Joe Val if Domantas Sabonis is out. And then you get to Phoenix. Q-tag Nick Richards, Q-tag Cody Martin, 10% ownership to Book and Durant, around 10 for Bradley Beal. And that's kind of how I see it. If I'm getting to anything for Phoenix, I'll take the 38-minute Booker game or the 38-minute Durant game here against Sacramento, but I'm not looking at these guys as any sort of major priority on the FanDuel side.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. I think you can get to any of those big three with Booker, KD, Beal, all around 10%. They're fine last guys in. I'm not really going to prioritize them, but they're in play on the slate. I think it's pretty hard to get to anyone else. Keep an eye on the status of Nick Richards. If he's out, Plumlee, I think, would be in play. Plumlee was on pace to play over 30 minutes last game, but again, got ejected there in the second quarter. So I do think Plumlee would be playable there if Richards gets ruled out. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else that I would get to for Phoenix.
10 up, 10 down, and we still are waiting on a bunch of news. We are going to have a wild slate. Ben Simmons is in for the Clippers today, and Live Before Lock is in the next 30 seconds. But right now, I need DK to tell the people where to find him.
Yeah, you guys can find me over on Twitter, DK__DFS, doing a prop and DFS content. Appreciate it.
There it is, everybody. Live Before Lock is here. Hit the like button for these guys. You're going to get a lot of news, ownership updates, projection updates. It's going to be a sprint to 7 o'clock, and then make sure you're on playback tonight with Greg and I. Good luck, everybody. Live Before Lock is next.
Musical stylings of Eric Lindquist to end out the week here. Eric, as always, thank you very much for the excellent music that you put together for our little inter-show highlight reel of Portfolio EV wins, which if you guys want to sign up for, 7-day free trial. It has been crushing so far in March and continually. We had new updates come to the algorithm last week to support more markets and new updates coming in the coming weeks as well, especially with baseball coming up. So I do us a favor, guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, if you want to check out Portfolio V, 7-day free trial, there's no reason not to try it out. Even if you don't like it, you just cancel. You never pay anything. At least get in the door and see if the tools are for yourself. Eric, my friend, how are you doing today? And join playback as well.
I'll do that here in 2.2 seconds. I'm doing well. Obviously missed everybody yesterday because I was yelling at my neighbor. That was fun. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed having no internet in the middle of an afternoon of a workday, but that is neither here nor there. We're ready to rock. We're ready to roll. Hopefully EMAC doesn't think I hate him because it might have seemed like I was ducking EMAC yesterday.
I mean, that's what you told me you were doing. You texted me. You said, hey, I don't want to do a show with EMAC, and I just noticed that a tree fell down, and I could use this as an excuse to pretend my power went out so I don't have to hang out with EMAC. I mean, that's what you had said to me.
If a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it except for me, does it? Well, no, because EMAC was there with the tree when it was first spawned up 400 years ago. So probably not.
People don't know. The Adam and Eve, EMAC was the Adam. He was the one. He changed his name over the years, but he was there initially. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the letters in Adam, they're in EMAC, not that far removed.
Just sitting there eating an apple. Hey, gamers.
Yeah, EMAC was really upset. So the reason the Snake got involved with the apple is because EMAC was like, we don't have anything better to eat here. What is this bullshit? And then it was a whole thing. It was a whole to-do.
Man. I want to keep going on this
right here, by the way, Eric. I think this is the best place to start is by talking about the Philadelphia 76ers because we've got pretty much everybody out for this team. And by pretty much everybody, I mean the guys who have any sort of a pulse are not going to be available for the Philadelphia 76ers today. So I'm sure you guys know by now the list of players who are out, although the guys weren't able to touch on it on the last show because projections update just came a couple of minutes ago and the 76ers updates kind of came out towards the tail end of the show there. But Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Justin Edwards. I mean, come on. These teams, the tanking is so egregious, they can't play Justin Edwards in these games. Andre Drummond, and of course, the guys who are out for the entire season, and Jared McCain and Joel Embiid. And then you got Quentin Grimes out, Lonnie Walker's out, Eric Gordon's out for the season, Tyrese Maxey's out. The reason I think their injury report is funny, Eric, they have more players listed as out than active today.
Like, what are we actually doing? I mean, that's just insane. Like, what are we actually doing, Phil? Do not trust the process. Do not trust it at all. The process has you with one of the worst contracts right now with what was assumingly one of the best players once upon a time. I don't know if that knee will ever be right for Joel Embiid. It is a massive problem to have Paul George on the books. That's the contract I was talking about. And then, you got a pretty decent looking rookie in McCain who hasn't played in forever and we kind of forget about, but like, Tyrese Maxey is the piece that you're building this team around. And like, just everything's gone to shit. Like everything has gone to shit. Top 6 protected. You need to tank your way into the top 6 or you'll lose it to OKC. And OKC will just get better. That's what the NBA really needs is OKC to have more draft equity than they already do. It's absurd times. But from a DFS perspective, I really don't see a planet where Jared Butler isn't in every single lineup. Like you could say he stubs his toe and gets hurt. But like, how do you get away from playing Jared Butler in every single lineup? He's projected for 44 at 4,600. I can't ever remember seeing this before, Greg, ever.
Look at how just the initial projections, which, you know, we talk about how they are data-based and certain players that they just project so well on a points per dollar basis, it can kind of break the projected ownership. Do you see what this number is on screen right here, which is hilarious for a couple of reasons? We have in first update here. We have Jared Butler projected for 97% ownership, and that hasn't projected to be under-owned.
Yep, I agree.
We have him projected for 97% ownership with a 99.92% chance of being in the winning lineup.
I'm just playing 100%. People who don't play him in a lineup today are the edge. Like long-term. It doesn't guarantee that the 2-3% doesn't come through or that he doesn't turn his ankle in the first quarter or get the Plumlee ejection that just absolutely destroyed my heart. When that happened, that was more from a betting perspective than a DFS perspective. But still, I don't see a planet where I don't start every lineup with Jared Butler. Like this is probably the most no-brainer cash game play that we've ever had on this show. And that's saying something because we've had some no-brainer cash plays.
Yeah, and this is like as no-brainer gets right here. Jared Butler, we've got him projected for 44 fantasy points at $4,600. And I mean, you look here at just the rotation for the 76ers. We got Jared Butler, Ricky Council, Jeff Doughton, Adem Bona, Yabusele, who also they're kind of being cautious with his minutes, Alex Reese, and then Jalen Hood-Schifino. So it's only 7 guys that they're going to be running a rotation of. And pretty much all of them you can make some sort of case for. Even somebody like, I'm actually really curious to get your thoughts on Yabusele because I know they've said that his minutes are going to be limited, but is he worth considering with the amount of guys who are out for the 76ers?
Yeah, I think everybody is. Obviously, the one thing is the only player you don't have listed here is O'Shea Brissett. O'Shea Brissett, going back to his Indy times, I mean, he can basically play that 4. You have Bona. And I mean, this is just insane looking at some of the things with Adem Bona here as well. He was somebody I was interested in last slate, 3,400. Didn't end up pulling the trigger because we got that 3K value. This time around at 3,800, I assume Alex Reese is still a distant second between the two of them. And I do think that there's a world where they can limit Yabusele because of O'Shea Brissett out there, does a lot of the same stuff. Plus, Yabusele's kind of proven he's just going to go out there and try and play really, really hard. Not even what the Philadelphia 76ers want. They want somebody who's like, I mean, what are you, how can you possibly, like, even if O'Shea Brissett tries, he's bad at basketball. We've proven that over a multi-year sample size of this guy being in and out. But I got to think that Yabusele is still in play because you can't just completely shut down in every single way. The NBA's now throwing fines out left and right for different stuff, as they should. The Lauri Markkanen deal. I know that this is not exactly a one-for-one example, but I got to think that Yabusele, in the event that he's just playing well and there's still someone intact, we got 28 minutes out of him last time around. I know there was no usage that came along with it, but you had Quentin Grimes, you had Kelly Oubre, you had all the dudes in. Now there's nobody. So Yabusele should be the guy that, if you're just like looking at this from the outset, should be like second in usage in the pecking order. Like, you still got to fire him up, I think, in tournaments at 9%.
So let's go through the 76ers guys here. And all right, so Jared Butler, for sure, yes. Like you said, he's going to be in all your lineups. I'm fairly certain he's going to be in all of my lineups as well. Who are the other real priorities for this team? So like Yabusele, I think he's kind of interesting from a GPP's perspective. You got Alex Reese is 8% owned. Jalen Hood-Schifino is 2% owned. Bona 13% owned, 27.8% ownership to Jeff Doughton. We got Ricky Council, 64% owned. And then I'll look at the FanDuel ownerships after this as well. A little bit different on FanDuel because it's including the late night games. What are the other real priorities for you from Philly?
Ricky Council is ridiculous. 3,700. When we get this starting lineup, it's going to kind of make things a little bit more concrete. This is the first game of the slate. Ridiculous amount of interest for everybody. But I assume that Ricky Council's starting. And just under that assumption, you have Hood-Schifino, Reese, Brissett. Those are the guys coming off the bench. I still think Ricky Council plays a boatload of minutes. Like, I can't imagine I don't get to him in almost 100% of lineups. I can make more of a case for getting away from him than Jared Butler purely because of what we have coming up a little bit later. And we'll kind of get into that, I suppose. But he is no doubt like a top 3 value option on this entire slate.
Yeah, and I also want to pull up, like I said, the FanDuel player projections and ownership projections for the FanDuel players on the Philadelphia 76ers because, with the extra games, it's going to make these slates a little bit more different than they typically would be, which, there's enough value on this slate. I think it's a little annoying that FanDuel is including the late games as well. But on the FanDuel side of things, with there being a little bit more games on the slate, we do have Jared Butler projected for only 89% ownership. It has gone down because there's more selections over on FanDuel. He's 89% projected on. Ricky Council 88.5%. These are not going to be the actual numbers for these guys, but they're going to be very, very popular. And then nobody else is really all that owned on FanDuel, which is kind of interesting, Eric. The next most popular player on the 76ers is Jeff Doughton at 4.5% owned. You've also got Yabusele at 4.5% owned. If you're looking at the FanDuel side of things, where there's all this ownership going to Jared Butler and Ricky Council, is there a guy that you like as a third option to be different and get exposure to the 76ers?
No. I mean, you can only play 4. I mean, that's kind of the big difference here is that, like, I would play 5 if FanDuel would allow it, but that's cheating. I would think.
But there's only 2 guys more than 4% owned on the team.
Well, how is Doughton at 4,400 not going to get popular? He's 4.5%. That's absurd. Why would Doughton, who's going to play a boatload of minutes under almost all circumstances, not be more popular on FanDuel? Like, that's crazy to me. So, like, Jared Butler, Ricky Council are ungodly popular as they should be. I feel like Jeff Doughton should be ungodly popular, and he's not. Alex Reese has power forward eligibility at 3,700. He's not. Adam Bona, I think because it's center and because we have the other games, like, I think Adam Bona is probably the guy that probably gets emitted for me. Like, I'd rather take shots on an Alex Reese just because of positionality there. But, I mean, Doughton looks awesome too. So maybe I didn't understand your question entirely correctly. But, I mean, yes, I love Butler.
The question was just, there's only 2 players picking up only any kind of meaningful ownership on FanDuel on the 76ers. Is there anybody that you like as a low-owned piece on Philly outside of the really popular options in Ricky Council and Jared Butler?
Alex Reese, 3,700, power forward eligibility. If Bona plays well, you know what they'll do? They'll rip him off the floor because that's what Philly's going to start doing with guys who are playing well. I think Toronto gave everybody, I mean, they already had the playbook. This has been going on for years now, but I think it definitely, for me, comes down to like positionality, which power forward, I'm kind of okay with giving up a spot there if need be. 3,700. It's kind of just a price play in addition to like if they are going to limit Yabusele, if they are going to limit bonus minutes, then you definitely have kind of the guy who benefits the most there in Alex Reese.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Jeff Doughton. And the reason I don't think he's going to be crazy popular on FanDuel is like, who does it come away from? Like Jordan Goodwin is $4,200 over on FanDuel with all the guys out for the Lakers. You've got Austin Reeves, also projected to be super popular. Dalton Connect is only $4,800. He's expected to be super popular. You just kind of run into this situation where not everybody could be massive chalk. And you got two massive chalk pieces on Philly. I don't disagree with you that Jeff Doughton could come in higher. He's much more likely to be over 4% than under 4%. But unless something's way different or updates, like I don't expect he's going to be 30% or anything like that. I tend to think he's going to be relatively contrarian.
Well, then that's fantastic. That is a fantastic thing. I'm playing my customary, well, I mean, not customary lately because I haven't played over there a lot. I'm playing one lineup on FanDuel today and like mainly everything. And he was, I thought, a pretty no-brainer option, but I suppose the field does not. And I get it. There's so many plays to get to that we're going to comb through, but like we have spend ups kind of all over the place. We have places that we can go. We lost Luka on the slate for FanDuel, so I suppose that might be part of it. But yeah, I mean, Austin Reeves is going to look ridiculous over there today. I mean, FanDuel's an interesting puzzle for sure.
All right. Let's also talk about the Los Angeles Lakers, just because this is such another important piece of the slate and what it is that we want to be doing with it. And I'll go back to DraftKings here and we'll look at some of the players who are projecting to be really popular on the Lakers on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And yeah, there's the abbreviation. Or not. Let me go back to, whoops. Yeah, I'll go back to FanDuel.
You're doing great.
So talking about the Lakers and what's going on with them, you mentioned it, no Luka. So with there being no Luka, the game against the Denver Nuggets, like an idiot, I switched over to DraftKings when it's a late night game. So I think this is a really important spot to be talking about when it comes to the Lakers for FanDuel purposes, because like I said before, the reason that there's so much more ownership going to the Philadelphia 76ers guys over on DraftKings relative to FanDuel and somebody like Jeff Doughton isn't picking up that much ownership, it's because of these Lakers pieces, where without Luka Doncic, we've got Austin Reeves 45% owned. We've got Jordan Goodwin 62% owned. Dalton Connect is 31.5% owned. Then you got Jared Vanderbilt right around 10% owned. But those are your chalk pieces. Austin Reeves, Jordan Goodwin, Dalton Connect. So when we're looking at the FanDuel slate, and these guys are just like the Philly guys, ones that very, very much have to be considered, who is your favorite option from the Lakers?
It's going to be Austin Reeves, a little bit more so than Jordan Goodwin. Jordan Goodwin looks great, but he's got shooting guard only, and his ownership is exponentially higher relative to his optimal percentage, which isn't something that we can say about anybody on Philly right now. Talked about the fact that I'm a little bit surprised to see Downton's ownership over there, but Austin Reeves is definitely the priority. He is 8,200. If you just had to put a new salary attached to him for this game specifically, Greg, how high do you go to make it fair?
I mean, based on our projection for him being 46 fantasy points, probably like 9,500 or something like that, which seems absurd for Austin Reeves. And there's absolutely blowout risk in this spot, but that's probably what the fair salary is, right?
Yeah, I was thinking more like almost 10K. Like I couldn't say 10K, like 9,800, but like I'm with you where it's like upper nines, mid to upper nines. And that's a ridiculous kind of mid-range piece to be able to throw into lineups. It is a back-to-back. There are massive blowout issues with this entire basketball game. You could end up running into Shake Milton minutes at 3,700, as somebody who's like way off the board if this game just goes completely south. You could get more minutes than you think for Jared Vanderbilt and make him somewhat interesting. But I think the two main ones for me in this game, specifically for FanDuel, that you need to entertain, Jordan Goodwin and Austin Reeves. But Goodwin's ownership is just asinine right now for a guy that is very, very shooting dependent. Same thing can be said about Dalton Connect there, but at least he's got the small forward eligibility to come along with it, a position that's a little bit weaker over there. But the fact that I can play Reeves at small forward, he is by far my favorite option. I'm making the one lineup. There's no way he's not in it.
How concerned are you about a potential blowout and what that could mean for a relatively expensive Austin Reeves, his playing time and his production?
And that's where I think, like, if I were making more than one lineup over there, if I were making 150, I would certainly have some Shake Milton in my life. Like, going back to his Brooklyn days, all over the place, Philadelphia days, we've seen Shake Milton go out and just go get buckets. He's 3,700 too. And I see everybody else with low ownership. Like, if you're going to not play Reeves actively in a lineup, in like a one lineup scenario, I would think I'd want to bring Shake Milton along, because I would think they're down 25 or 30 going into a fourth quarter. And that's like 12 minutes of guaranteed run for Shake Milton, maybe Bronny James, which is just hilarious to say, not from a DFS perspective, but more of like, if it gets crazy blowout, you're going to let Bronny go out and do whatever. But I think Shake Milton, 3,700, he's 1% owned, but like, I think that's kind of your key to it, is like, if Austin Reeves completely fails here, if he doesn't put up 40 plus, I would think Shake Milton's an intriguing guy to bring off the bench.
Yeah, definitely makes sense to me. Also, want to bring up to you guys, mentioned it yesterday, we got something brand new on the site, which is totally free. If you guys do those underdog best ball, I keep calling them best ball, but snake draft, like I don't know the proper terminology, just so people understand what it is, but there's these there are these underdog DFS contests that are snake drafts, and they play out like DFS contests, and they've become quite popular. Prize pool is north of $100,000 pretty regularly. So we're supporting them over on the site. And because it's a new product, we want to make it free so you guys could try it out. So if you head on over to Stokastic and look at the NBA drop-down menu, you'll see rankings for the underdog drafts. Check it out. Totally free. Go over to the site. If you guys are playing in those drafts, take advantage of the free projections that we have up there. Jason and Rich, those guys have been working on it and doing a really good job. So go check it out. Totally free. So no cost to yourself there. Let's talk about the other part of this slate, which is going to be with all the value we have. Pay-up options become very important. And pay-up options, once again, it's going to be different FanDuel and DraftKings, especially with the Jokic situation, with him being obviously somebody you can get to on FanDuel, not on DraftKings, though. Who are you prioritizing spending up for tonight, Eric?
Yeah, it looks pretty clear-cut to me that Jason
We'll
Tatum's
start on DraftKings,
the guy.
and we can do FanDuel after.
Oh, yeah. We're doing DraftKings. I'm talking Jason Tatum. He's 11-1. I don't care. You don't have Jaylen Brown out there. You don't have Kristaps Porzingis out there. 47.5. I just saw somebody put in chat as well. I usually just copy paste and try to like get their PRA over there. I'm not doing that today. I mean, I just know it's an asinine number. His rates are ridiculous. I don't want to say he's too cheap, but we just have the access to be able to go get him at 11-1. I think he's definitely my clear-cut number one. And number two, it's weird to have James Harden and this much interest, but I do. LaMelo Ball, probably third. Somebody that I was entertaining betting triple-double plus 2250 at Hard Rock. Like, there are ways LaMelo Ball in a game that has a much more competitive spread than we've seen for Charlotte lately, and now taking on a San Antonio team that doesn't have anything to play for. Like, there's a way that this just becomes neutral and LaMelo Ball has to play more. Like, this is probably the most interest I've had in LaMelo Ball in a slate in quite some time. But I think the clear-cut number one for me is Tatum 1, Harden 2, LaMelo 3.
Yeah, and I think there's some other interesting pay-up options just because of the fact that we have so much value on the slate. And none of these guys are all that popular. Like, we've got 33% ownership going to Tatum. It's somewhat popular, but it's not that big of a slate on DraftKings. Got infinite value. So I'm surprised that Tatum isn't more popular. Like you mentioned as well, Harden only 22% on, LaMelo 19% on. I think it's going to be really easy to get overweight to pretty much all of these pay-up options. But then as far as contrarian guys go as well, we've got Trae Young. He is 4% owned. We got 6% ownership going to Alperen Şengün. Anthony Edwards, he's in a tough matchup against Orlando, but he's only 3% owned. Ja Morant, 2% owned. There are contrarian pay-up options that I'm really liking for the slate as well. Is there a particular one that is lesser owned that stands out to you? I've got somebody on top of my mind. I'm curious for yourself, though.
Kawhi Leonard, he's playing a boatload of minutes. He's 8,700. Nobody's really going crazy with him at the moment. I have a ton of interest in the game environment. He's 17% owned, so that's not egregious by any means. I'm curious who you're thinking of.
Yeah, so for myself, it's Ja Morant, especially because he's going up against a slightly diminished version of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The minutes were a very big concern for a while with Morant, but he's played bigger minutes in competitive games as of late, and even though Donovan Mitchell's out, I think we both expect this game to be, fairly competitive. It's not like there's a lopsided spread or anything like that. I know Jaren Jackson Jr. is listed as question, which is very bizarre to me. He suffered an injury that's a 4 to 6 week injury, and now he's been out for like a week and a half, and he's questionable to play today. So maybe they lied about what the injury is, but if they didn't, it seems pretty unlikely to me that Triple J would be out there. And John Morant, the last handful of games, 31.5 minutes, 34 minutes, 36.5 minutes, 35.5 minutes. He's taken on a much bigger minutes workload for a couple of reasons. Number one, they've had to rely on him a little bit more. Jaren Jackson Jr. up. But then the other side of this as well, seeding is becoming really important here. And it's something as well that it's so tight. It's so tight at the top of the Western Conference standings, which I think has absolutely been a motivator for the Grizzlies to start to extend the playing time of John Morant and then also really try to secure the number 2 seed so that they could have home court advantage and maybe on the opposite side of the bracket of the Oklahoma City Thunder as well. So John Morant being 2% owned, that's an easy guy for me to want to be overweight to the field too.
That is a really good shout out. Again, I like when we kind of get into the weeds on these really low owned pieces. Alex Reese on FanDuel, John Morant, spend up, completely different deals. But when you're piecing together a lineup and you're looking for ways to be contrarian without being stupid, I think John Morant probably at the top of the list there too. Also, just thinking about what the right tail could look like for John Morant in certain spots. Like, as you said before, this is going to be a very competitive spot here. I would probably prefer to have Triple J out if we're going to get any John Morant firing up. Like, if we're going to be looking at going heavier there, but nice to see 37 minutes against New Orleans 5 days ago. The minutes can get up there in competitive spots, and that's what this projects out to be. Much more competitive than Cleveland or Memphis generally have on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so that's a guy that I have my eye on as a really contrarian option. So let's start to answer the questions that are sitting here waiting for us. And then after we hit on those, Eric, then we'll do the nuke of the night. But first, your guys' questions. Want to make sure that we answer some of those, and then we'll also see what other kind of injury news breaks as we go here. First off, we have a lot of these piling up. Okay. Coach DFS wants to know top DK cash game plays. Yeah, I mean, for cash games on DraftKings, some of these are just super easy. Jared Butler, Ricky Council, Jeff Doughton, no doubt about it. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and probably Tatum as a pay-up option. Cash games are going to be like 1v1 and 2v2s today.
As they should be. Like, you should almost all have the same damn lineup. This is one of those days, like, you could say just prove it. Like, I know that that's kind of a thing from yesteryear, talking football and cash games. Like, just, it seems too obvious, but then it's like, oh, go out and, prove that you know how to build that lineup. I think even if you didn't know what you were doing, it'd be hard to build out a lineup in cash that was incorrect today. Like, it'd be hard not to build the optimal.
Yeah. So I'm going to say those guys that I just listed off, Jason Tatum as a pay-up option, and then Butler, Council, Doughton, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. Is there other injury news that could possibly break that would have you off of those guys in cash games? Like, I know we still have some players who are questionable and it's going to impact the slate, but Dallas, I don't know if it's anybody that's going to impact cash options.
Dallas could. Yeah, probably not cash options. I think you're probably correct about that. I think, PJ Washington getting ruled out probably makes the most sense, where like you then get Kessler Edwards out there. You probably could get, a number of ways that things can pan out there. But yeah, nobody that you would entertain for cash for sure.
Yeah, and if we go ahead, by the way, PJ Washington, he has been ruled out for tonight. So as far as the DraftKings slate goes, these are the players that we're still waiting on news for. Jaren Jackson Jr. is questionable. Cole Anthony is questionable. Dante Exum is questionable. KCP is questionable due to rest. So still some players that could potentially be ruled out, open up some additional value options. But to me, like I said before, more GPP. The cash game guys kind of locked into who it is that I want to be targeting. PJ Washington being out. Oh, by the way, more news. So PJ Washington is out. Dante Exum is in. We've got the 76ers starting lineup. Let's hit on these things in order. No real surprise here, but Castle is going to start in place of De'Aaron Fox, who's out for the season. And yeah, that was expected. No, that doesn't really change anything significantly on that end. But PJ Washington being out, is that going to move anything significantly for yourself?
Yeah, nothing like significantly. We did just get Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope out.
Okay.
Curious to see. I mean, we're probably getting the Corey Joseph. I think Anthony Black, probably the next guy who would make sense. But I think Jet Howard, just based off the rotations last game, he has a chance, I think, of stepping into the starting unit. Gary Harris has generally been the guy over however many years that steps into a role. But even at 3K on this specific slate, in that game environment, there's like no way that I'm playing him. Oh, now we got Kai Jones out. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, so we've got Kai Jones out. Brandon Williams is in. That was actually the one that was going to be most significant in terms of what I was looking at for today. But also, I don't even know if we had Kai. Did we have Kai Jones projected to play? Let's see. I don't recall.
We had
Kai Jones in for 13 minutes. So we did
Yeah.
have him playing some of the backup center minutes there. So just to round up here, PJ Washington, who we had in for 27 minutes, he will not play today. And then we also had Kai Jones, who's in for 13 minutes. He will not play. I have to assume this means that like high 20s minutes for Kessler Edwards again.
Yeah, he's 4,700, which is still something that's just fine considering he should play 30 plus minutes now. You get Kai out. You're still on a minutes limit for Powell. They went De Silva. Okay, interesting. Orlando, you're an interesting basketball team. But Edwards is now definitely somebody. I know you were banging the drum for him at 4,300 last time. 4,700 against Houston. It's a little different than 4,300 against San Antonio. I'll put it that way. But the minutes should still be there in like 30, 32. He is definitely in play here now. And as you said before, Brandon Williams would have had us looking more towards Dinwiddie here. I think with Christie, Thompson, Marshall up to 8K, considering the Houston matchup on the other side, probably nothing crazy here because Dante Exum in as well, correct?
Yeah, Dante Exum in, Brandon Williams in. So there was potential for a lot of value in the backcourt for Dallas, but that's kind of gone by the wayside with this update that we had here. Earlier in the season, yeah, guys would have looked pretty good there, but at this point in the season and all of the value we have for today, nothing that I think is like must play from the Dallas backcourt or anything like that. The next question that we have here, it is from Kraken Tiles. Wants to know, is there going to be overlay on FanDuel in the $5 GPP?
I was just looking at that. It's getting interesting. It's up to like 26 and change. I've been paying attention to it because I might throw some more lineups in it if it's at 82% full. So it's probably not going to overlay, but it's not going to fill. I definitely think it's safe to say it's not going to fill.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this week a handful of contests overlay on both DraftKings and FanDuel down the stretch of the season. It won't massively overlay, but earlier in the year, I would have said there's no chance NBA DFS contests overlay, but we're starting to see it happen, somewhat regular. That's why the DraftKings contest is, instead of a $15 or $5 like they've been running to get the $300 prize pool, it's an $18 now to fill that $300 prize pool. So contest getting a little bit smaller at this point in the season. Certainly possible that we see the FanDuel overlay. Probably a little bit more likely than not, but not in a way where it's like creating some sort of massive edge. It'd be like a couple thousand unused entries. Let's see what is next. The next question we have here is from Steven Leibowitz. Steve wants to know, how long does it take after projections and ownership are updated until it is reflected in the Sims? Yeah, so once the projections and ownership are updated, like then you're good to go and just run everything. So, usually projections are updated, then ownership updates like 2 to 3 minutes later, and then you're good to run the contest generator, the Sims, all of that. Same goes with the late swap process. Next question is from Sniffs1234. He says, is there a player to be worried about on Philly to DNP like Boucher did? Not really. Not in my opinion. Is there anybody you're considering playing? Keep in mind also, the 76ers only have 7 guys in our projections. There's 5 of them are starting, so none of them are going to be you can't start and be a DNP. That's impossible. Is there anybody you're worried about just flat out not playing from Philly?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, a completely different situation, if we're being honest. Like, I know what you're saying because it sucks when you get a 0 like that and it just comes out the way that it does. I had like 40% of him. I know that Josh had 75% of him. It's awful. It's a terrible thing to have happen, but you can't be scared of playing guys that project out so damn well. And like, I don't think Hood Schifino is somebody who's going to project out well as is. I don't think Alex Reese on DK is somebody you needed to be going nuts with at 3K because it still eats up a lineup spot, and you're going to need 25, 30 out of every lineup spot today. That is almost a certainty. So at the same time that like I don't think any of them DNP, I'm not actually even worried about it.
Yeah, I'm checking to see Dallas. Not quite updated. It will be shortly, and then we'll read off some of those projections updates. So continue answering your guys' questions in the interim here. We've got Don't Be Soy says, running behind over here, how many Sixers are available to play? We have 7 Sixers in our projections today. That is the state of this team. And once again, in case you guys missed the top of the show, and there's always frequent updates that come in, here are the ownership and the player projections for these guys on the DK side of things. Jared Butler for 44 fantasy points, 98% ownership. Ricky Council, 33 fantasy points, 92% ownership. 29 fantasy points for Jeff Doughton and 56% ownership. Dembona, 28 fantasy points and 36% ownership. Then you got Yabusele, 26.5 fantasy points and 11% ownership. Alex Reese, just under 23 fantasy points and 22% ownership. And then Jalen Hood-Schifino, 20 fantasy points at 2% ownership. Do you know how crazy it is to have somebody who's a flat min on a 7-game slate project for over 20 fantasy points and 2% ownership? And by the way, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's how much value there is today. That never happens.
It's an absurd amount of value. And again, that's just what I wanted to reiterate is Alex Reese is going to have a very high value number, and it doesn't matter to me on DK. Like it actually actively doesn't matter, which is insane. But that's the kind of slates that we're playing here. And the more you do this, the more that you've played like preseason slates where salary doesn't matter or where you're doing other things. It's a combination of trying to find 30 in every single lineup spot, not necessarily sitting around and worrying about, because again, like Jared Butler is unavoidable. The way he looks, the way he projects is unavoidable. Ricky Council, the way he looks and projects is unavoidable on DK. I can kind of avoid every other player and make a case for avoiding them. I'm not going to avoid Bona and Doughton, but I'm just saying that like you have to get absolutely 25 out of every lineup spot today or you're not winning, period. End of story.
And once again, on the FanDuel side of things, we got 93% ownership to Butler, Council at 81% ownership, Doughton at 19% ownership, now 22% ownership to Bona, 7% to Yabusele, 17% to Alex Reese, and then just 1% to Jalen Hood-Schifino. So those are the most recent updates that we have for the Philadelphia 76ers. And then it looks like we have a projections update as well, which probably is going to be encompassing the Dallas Mavericks. Let's see. Yes, it does. So we've got Najee Marshall now for 35 fantasy points. He's all the way up to 8K. I keep saying that there's no way he's going to continue. We're still waiting on the ownership update. I keep saying at these price points, there's no way Najee Marshall is going to be popular. And then he continues to be popular. Like he was popular at $7,500, which made me pretty uncomfortable the other day. I have to think this is where it ends. He can't be chalk at 8,000 as well. Then you got Clay. He's projected for sub 30 fantasy points at $6,500. There's really not a single player that's projecting well from Dallas, Eric. I don't think there's a team, especially considering the amount of value we have. I don't think I'm going to be getting anybody from Dallas.
Kind of what I threw out there to you is like, once we got Exum in, even with PJ Washington out, like it changes props. It's going to move things. It's kind of what I said yesterday. It's like rearranging deck chairs. It's like, oh, here we go. Now that this guy's going to play a little bit, but he's not all that appealing. Like, I think Edwards is about the only guy that I have any interest in outside of Najee Marshall, maybe in like all lineup in 150, because I'm playing 150 on DK today. But I can't imagine that I'm going to get to anything over like 1% or 2%.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way as far as Dallas goes. Too much other value that we have on the slate. And the next question that we have here, Lucky wants to know, am I boosting anybody? Yes, John Morant and Desmond Bane. I don't think Triple J plays. Yourself? Boosting anybody?
Am I boosting anybody? No, I'm not at the moment. So on FanDuel, if I were playing more lineups, I know one guy that I would boost, and that's Jonas Valanciunas in the event that Domantas Sabonis doesn't play. It's so hard to get away from Zubats at 8,100, but it's a back-to-back. Jonas Valanciunas just can't be on the floor in small ball situations. Golden State just ran him off the floor. He played 14 minutes. They had Ellis start, or so not Ellis, but Lyles started the second half. But you've got now this weird situation where on the other side, Nick Richards is questionable. And behind him, it would just be a lot of Plumlee there. I'd take a look at Plumlee as well. And then Domantas Sabonis, if he ends up playing, you just play 0 Jonas Valanciunas and find ways to get out of that position. But Trey Lyles is questionable behind it too. There's like a lot of ways where Jonas Valanciunas just plays 30 plus minutes because of necessity, and you just get an epic smash out of him at 7,100. Like, I think he's probably the best, like 1% tournament play we've had in a long time for like FanDuel purposes.
I feel that way about a bunch of guys. Like I said, I feel that way about John Morant too. Like John Morant unowned on the slate, and potential for him to have a big ceiling with Triple J out. But let's see what else we have for questions. Rabashua, is Hood Schifino active but not playing? No, I expect them to play. They only have 7 guys to give minutes to. They're going to run a 6-man rotation.
Yeah, there's not a lot of choices anymore. I mean, there are limited places that they can go right now. It just is what it is.
Next question that we have here is from Lucky wants to know, is there any team we should up the variance on or any particular players? Are there any particular high variance spots that you have your eye on, Eric, that you want to adjust in the Sims for?
Not that I'm doing today. I've looked at some spots. For me, there's just like making sure that I can find a little diversification away from like 2 players that I'm just going to have like 100% of. Like, I'm just going to play like 100%. Maybe it doesn't end up being a full 100, but like, I can't imagine many worlds where Butler and Ricky Council are in like everything on DK. And I think the variance button might make the most sense in like the mid-range, like the mid-range plays, but I'm not going to parse through it today.
All right. And the next question we have from Discord, which once again, guys, you want to sign up for any of the packages we have here at Stokastic.com, links down below in the YouTube description box. It comes with access to our Discord. All these people who are asking us questions from Discord, they're just Stokastic subs. It comes with their subscription. They hang out. They're in chat all day. They ask us questions. They sweat the games together. You can either sign up through any of the links we have down below or sign up with any of our partners. Fanatics, Chalkboard, Sleeper, Bet365, Better, Caesars, DraftKings, Vivid, BetMGM, FanDuel, Underdog. Sign up at any of these books, and here's what you're going to get. You're going to get 1 free month of core access to a sport of your choosing, and then you could also take advantage of the different deposit bonus offers. Like some of these sites, you could put in $250. They give you $250 on top of it, and then you're also getting access to stuff like free subscription to our site. It is a really good value you should be taking advantage of if you are not already. Let's see. OKOS says thoughts on Hood Schifino and Bona for tonight. I don't think I'm updating everything right now for the Dallas news. I don't think I'm going to be getting to very much of Jalen Hood Schifino. I will absolutely be getting to a Dem Bona though.
Yeah, Bona 100% going to be getting to. Not in 100% because I keep saying that, but I'm going to play a lot of Adam Bona on DK.
Yeah, I think Bona is a very strong value option. OKOS, thoughts on fading the late night games on FanDuel? I think it's a mistake to fade the Lakers. I know there's a lot of blowout risk there, but there's no Luka Doncic or LeBron James. There's so much usage up for grabs. I think it's wise to get some exposure there. I think just writing that game off entirely is a mistake.
Reeves, Goodwin, Connect. One of them is going to be a must on FanDuel. I would say at least one is going to be a must on FanDuel. 8,200 Austin Reeves, man. I don't know what to tell you. FanDuel, like that's a FanDuel question. You're not fading the late game. You're just not.
All right. So people are asking us to do the nuke of the night, Eric. We have so much that's gone on. So I don't even want to take the 2 minutes or whatever, 45 seconds to run the animation. Let's just give out our nukes of the night, just so that we have, those tournament plays out that people want to hear, but at the same time, too, not taking up too much additional time. So, Eric, do you have a GPP play that you are really liking tonight? Do you want to put the nuke of the night stamp on?
So I kind of gave the FanDuel one because I'm actually playing over there, and I might play a little bit more because this contest is not going to fill. It's not going to overlay, but it's not going to fill. I thought Jonas Valanciunas, if you end up getting him by himself there, with no Lyles and no Sabonis, I think that you want to find a way to maneuver things around and have exposure to him there at 7,100. But for DraftKings, it's so hard to get away from some of this chalk. It looks so damn good no matter which direction you go. So it comes down to like, where can I get different in like the mid-range? And that's always something I'm trying to figure out. I love Devin Vassell today, but he's pulling a ton of ownership at the moment. Stephon Castle is pulling a ton of ownership here as well. You know who's not pulling any ownership and only played a minimal amount of minutes? Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson could be like a sneaky beneficiary with no De'Aaron Fox, with no Wembanyama out there, and a lot of ownership coming in specifically on Castle and Devin Vassell. I think rightfully, like I think that they're going to be the main beneficiaries. Keldon Johnson has a 16.5 points prop across the industry today. And the more I was running stuff early on in the day, and then now, he seems to be one of those contrarian pieces that I just think shows up a ton for me, because you get 10%, you get to like 25% of him. You have different looking lineups. And I think there is a ton of upside in what his minutes could be going forward for a team that actively doesn't care about winning anymore. Had some weird minutes, again, 17 last time out against Dallas. Such a weird spot overall, but I think he is just fine to go here for high 20s minutes. Should be out there chucking a lot in the absence of these guys. Keldon Johnson, nuke of the night.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout out with the Spurs being shorthanded. No clue what they're going to end up doing. You know, no De'Aaron Fox. I can't imagine Chris Paul is going to play a ton down the stretch of the season either.
Exactly.
For myself, I'm going to stick with a guy I've been talking a little bit about here, John Morant. Honestly, I like him even if Jaren Jackson plays, but I really like him a good amount if Triple J ends up sitting. So, I mean, 2% ownership on a slate that is this much value for a guy who's regularly been priced higher than this at times in the past. Give me John Morant as a contrarian spend-up option for my nuke of the night. Now let's get to some of the super chats before we get back to the questions in Discord. And if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Del Toro 428i wants to know our favorite FanDuel GPP plays by position. So, Eric, I've got the FanDuel projections pulled up here. I'll go over to point guard to start. Who do you like the most as a FanDuel GPP option at point guard? Some of these are going to be just like unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jared Butler seems pretty good. We'll start with him. I like James Harden as well, playing James Harden in that one lineup.
Yeah, I just don't know how you get away from Jared Butler, regardless of what the game format is. Even in GPPs where he's projected to be over 90% owned, I still think he looks really strong for this slate. So I'm going to go to Jared Butler at point guard. If I'm going to be different, Stephon Castle is only 18% owned over on FanDuel. I think that's a way to get somebody who has upside that's a little bit lower owned, but Jared Butler, pretty clearly the top overall point guard option for me on FanDuel. At shooting guard, kind of the same deal as with Jared Butler. I don't know how you get away from Ricky Council, but if I wanted to be a little bit different here, I'm going to take a look at Derek White at 10% ownership with the Boston Celtics. Once again, a little bit shorthanded. What do you have at shooting guard, Eric?
Yeah, it's so very obvious to just play Ricky Council on FanDuel, so I'm not going to try to get cute there. Want to throw out, not Peyton Pritchard, but I'll go Derek White. We've seen a lot of ceiling games lately where you've had at least one of those main pieces out. Well, Jaylen Brown is one of those main pieces. Him and Kristaps Porzingis. Derek White, 7,100, somebody on FanDuel that I find to be a little bit appealing.
All right, let's go ahead and look at small forward now. And small forward, we finally get to a position that doesn't have somebody projected for, 100% ownership. Austin Reeves still fairly popular at 40% owned, but the guy that I like the most at the small forward position with all the value on FanDuel, Jason Tatum is a pay-up option at 10.5.
Yeah, 10.5 cheaper than his tag on DK, easier to fit into lineups. He's 31% owned there. He should be. Him and Dalton connect. Just make a lot of sense at small forward. Austin Reeves is small forward. He has that positionality for whatever reason, so that's fantastic as well. To get a little bit different, Paolo Banchero, 8,700 over there. It is a back-to-back, but Orlando can't really mess around. They're sitting, I believe they have the 7 seed right now, but you don't want to be sitting there for long because you would prefer to be getting either the home court or moving your way up. Probably going to be tough for them to sneak into that top 6, but I know that there is no doubt about it. Avoiding that 8-9 spot, that is extremely important.
And at power forward, if we're looking at the power forward spot here, boy, lots of different directions to go with the power forward spot over on FanDuel. I'm going to give out somebody kind of in the same vein as what you said, but Franz Wagner. Same idea, same team, just a slightly lower price point. I view them as being pretty interchangeable. I like Banchero, I like Franz Wagner as well.
Yeah, just kind of mixing them into DK lineups too, because we have the salary and trying to, we've seen so many times one of them just kind of goes off and kind of paves the way for the other guy. Paulo Banchero has been doing it a lot lately. When they first got back, it was a lot of Franz Wagner. I don't know what to make of it, but I'm going to take a lot of shots on both, so I like it. Contrarian power forward, Jared Vanderbilt, 4,500 on FanDuel, where you're able to play that Lakers game. If it somehow ends up competitive and we have all these other Lakers, he makes a nice fourth addition to that pool.
And the next question that we have, I forgot the center position. I really like Jokic as a contrarian center. He's only 10% owned. There's a scenario here where if the Lakers keep this game fairly competitive, I mean, Jokic might have a low owned like 70, 80 fantasy point game. So I like Jokic as a contrarian GPP play on FanDuel.
Love that. Talk through Jonas Valanciunas enough already.
All right, and let's get to the next question. Nape wants to know for a 2v2, Jeff Doughton and Devin Vassell or Ty Jerome and Keldon Johnson? Doughton and Vassell for me.
Doughton and Vassell.
Next question, Michael Wallace. Can I have 4 76ers and 3 Cavs in the same lineup? Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. No rules.
All right, we've got Yobi Trice. Is Boncaro better play than Bridges now that Cole Anthony is out? And then can you please rank? All right, so let's answer these in part because there's a few questions here. Is Boncaro better play than Bridges now that Cole Anthony is out? I still have more. I like Paulo Boncaro, but I have more exposure to Bridges.
Yeah, I like them both. Bridges I have the most of for sure.
Next part of the question is, can you rank Vassell, Castle, and Allen? And then does it seem like Mobley has not performed well for that price? Zubats looks better. But don't forget Donovan Mitchell's out, right?
Yeah,
like
it's completely different situation.
Changes the equation. By the way, I'm underweight to the field on Mobley, not because I think he's a poor option. He's just super, super popular. So I have him in 25% of lineups, so he's projected for nearly 50% ownership. But yeah, I think Mobley looks good, just a little bit too popular. As far as Vassell, Castle, and Allen, let's see. That is, for me, I have it Castle 1, Vassell 2, Allen 3. Do you have a priority there?
Castle, yeah, I'm piecing it together here while I'm running everything. Castle 1, no, Vassell 1, Castle 2, Johnson 3. But again, the ownership plays into that, and Keldon Johnson's positionality, so is what it is. I like him the most as that result.
T. Willis wants to know FanDuel GPP. By the way, this is Casey Conroy just asked the almost the exact same question. He asked Vassell, Castle, or Jared Allen. Yeah, so once again, Castle for me.
Yep.
T. Willis, FanDuel GPP, Bridges or KD? I prefer Bridges to Kevin Durant.
I do too.
All right, let's get to, boy, so many questions today, guys. Thank you for all of the questions that we've got here, but we'll speed run through and get to as many of these as we can. Bando, 2 favorite center plays on DraftKings. That is, for me, relative to ownership, Alex Reese and Ivica Zubats.
Yeah, Zubats, and it won't be Reese for me, Bona.
Okay. Now we've got from OKOS, minimum 3 or 4 Philly and top Philly must-have plays on FanDuel. Yeah, the top Philly plays are by far Butler and Council, and then Jeff Doughton as a third one. I have no issues running out 3 or 4 Philly players. There's no problem with that at all. Atlanta Braves fan, thoughts on Paulo as a contrarian spend-up? Like it. I like it.
Yep, here for it.
Rabashua wants to know, what about O'Shea Brissett? He
not available
is, if I'm not mistaken, not in the player pool.
Not in the player pool. Makes it tough.
Yeah. The Black Mamba wants to know, can we talk about the Spurs? And we've talked about him a little bit. I like Devin Vassell. I like Stefan Castle a lot. Eric shouted out Keldon Johnson as a contrarian option. There's no real like other ancillary pieces I'm considering from the Spurs outside of what we've talked about, though.
Yeah, I mean, my main thing is like Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes. What purpose would you have for playing them high, like mid-high 30s minutes ever? Like Chris Paul never would get there anyway, so he's like mid-20s. But what I'm getting at is that like, as you're kind of packing it in, you got to be giving some of these younger guys the run. Now, we say that knowing full well that Toronto didn't feel that way, but overall, it is certainly something where I just think, Keldon Johnson, he's been around the block actually a little bit. Gold medalist Keldon Johnson, if you will. But Harrison Barnes is definitely somebody you're going to mute the minutes of going forward.
The next question we have here is from M. Grizzly wants to know, who are we most under and overweight to the field to? So some of this is I want to make sure that I have this worded properly, because there's going to be guys who I am underweight to the field to, but I still have like 30% of lineups or 25%, like Evan Mobley, for instance. I'm underweight to the field to him, but it's only because he's so popular. I still have like a decent chunk of exposure to him. But the two guys I'm most underweight to the field to are Adem Bona and Evan Mobley. The guys I'm most overweight to the field to are Alex Reese and Kawhi Leonard. For yourself, Eric, who are you most over and underweight to the field to?
Wow. Definitely.
By the way, Morant pretty close as well for somebody else that I'm overweight to, but those are just the two that I have the most overweight to.
Okay. James Harden, I am the most overweight to on DK. I don't think it's close. He's at 25%. Yeah, I'm north of 50. And then let's see, Keldon Johnson, definitely. I'm up to 28% of him.
And then M. Grizzly asked, do we have any interest in Jaren Jackson Jr. if he plays? No, not for me. Number one, I don't think he plays. And then even if he does, I expect him to be somewhat limited. I mean, the Grizzlies may have just flat out lied to us about what the injury is, but grade 2 ankle sprain, that's a long-term injury. And he only just recently suffered the injury. So it's either not the injury or there's like something where there's something else we're missing here. So I would think he's limited even if he plays. OKOS wants to know, is Garland a priority for today? To an extent. I have him in a third of my lineups.
Yeah, Garland looks good.
OKOS, Leonard, Mobley, Bane, rank them. And he says for FanDuel, sure. That is going to be Mobley 1, Leonard 2, and Bane 3 for me.
I didn't even see it. Leonard 1, Leonard, Bane. Yeah, Bane's 3, but Bane could look just drastically different in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. But either way, Mobley, Leonard, Bane, that is going to be the order for myself. So we were actually able to answer all of your guys' questions. I was getting nervous that we weren't going to get to all of them right there, but we did it. We did the job. Here's what we still have on the injury report for today, on top of whatever the starting lineups end up being later on in the day. And then, of course, Josh and I are going to be on playback in just a minute to break down anything that happens post-lock, go over late swaps and all of that. We're still waiting on Domantas Sabonis being questionable. Scotty Barnes is questionable. Jaren Jackson Jr. is questionable. Aaron Gordon is questionable. Nick Richards is questionable. Ochai Agbaji is questionable. Trey Jemison is questionable. So, guys, come hang out with Josh and I over in playback. This should be a fun slate. We should have late swap opportunities. And then also, as far as DraftKings goes, the entire slate is going to be locked by the time Josh and I are done with the show. So that'll be fun too. There won't be any news for the DK slate that we're still waiting on, whether it be starting lineups or injury news at the conclusion of the show. So if you haven't done it, one more time, guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to sign up for Portfolio EV, 7-day free trial, take advantage of that offer. If you want to sign up for the Stokastic Sims, take advantage of the link join offer. Get yourself a free month. Other than that, guys, have a great night. Hope you guys have a great weekend. But come join Josh and I over on playback. I think you're making a big mistake if you don't join us over there. And I am right now dropping that link into the YouTube chat for you guys. So just click on this link and you can join us over on playback. See you guys over there. Good night.